Okay, so I've already previously cut this in a video take yesterday that I didn't end up saving. It is 23 inches, 21 is the desired length. Giving myself an inch on either side for the loop. So you're going to take your floral tape, stretch it out so it's nice and tacky. I start about 1.5 inches down, and I'm going to work towards the end. You just want to wrap it. When you get to the end, you want to fold it back down and go back to where you started. And then do a nice neat cut. You want to do that on both ends. Now you can pre-cut the tape if you feel that that's helpful. In this situation, I don't really see that's necessary. And then go to the end, fold it back down. It's a little tricky when you've got 20-some inches of wire that you have to handle. But this gives you a nice coating of the fiber, so it doesn't unravel, and it also protects you from the sharp ends of the wire. Now this part here, take your needle nose pliers, about 1 inch or so, and I usually judge 1 inch is my top of my finger to my first knuckle. That's a hairdresser's inch. I mean, until my hands are all knotted from doing hair for 30 years, to the second knuckle is usually 2 inches. So when you come in and say you want 2 inches, do I get a measuring tape out? No. I use my finger. So 1 inch is first knuckle. About there, we're going to bend it. Let's see, can you see? Back pretty far. And then you're going to go up to the end of the wire and curve up, and then just keep moving down. Sometimes I have to bend it back a little bit more until you get a nice round or round-ish loop. Can you see that? This is going to be what you run your cording ribbon or twine through. There you go, you can see it, my finger in the back of it. You do the same thing for both sides. Now this is going to be a quite long video because I haven't mastered any video editing yet. I downloaded 2 or 3 different apps yesterday and removed them after figuring out that all they're going to do is allow you to trim the video ever so slightly. Most of them just offer filters and stickers and whatnot, and I don't want to filter my videos. There you go. I guess I had my hands up too high. So you want the end to curl on both ends. You want them to end up in the same direction so that when you tie the ribbon, it stays on. If one is facing down and one is facing up, can you see that? Here, let's try that one. If one is facing down and one is facing up, the chances of the ribbon sliding out of one end and not the other I don't know, maybe it wouldn't happen, but I like to think of all the scenarios. All right, so we have this. I'm going to change this angle because I think that I'm having to keep my hands too low, and I like to work up here. Either that, let me drop my chair. Ouch, I just collapsed it on top of me. All right, let's see if this works. Yeah, this works better. Okay. All right, so yesterday we made all of these little bouquets. Here. And then what I didn't show in that video is that I went back and made teeny tiny little ones here. That's going to be our very beginning on this end. So I'm going to get these all out of my way so that I have a workspace. Now before you start, let me go back. All right, you want to mark the halfway point on the crown if you are going to have like a centerpiece or a focal point in the center. Usually I try and focus like a bigger flower, or like I start smaller on the ends and work bigger towards the middle and then go back smaller. I'm not sure that that's the case with this one, but I know that I'm using red and white flowers. One is going to end up being in the center. So I like to fold to give me a general idea, or you can also take, since that's the middle right there, you can take a little piece of floral tape, which is brilliant, I just thought of that, and mark the center. So when you're getting all into the construction, you don't lose sight of the center, because I say that because that's happened multiple times, and I've had to either go back and remove and rework until I have the right flowers in the center, or redesign the rest of the crown because I'm lazy. All right, so now we have our center marked, so we know when we get close to that we have to pay attention to what we're doing. Back to the beginning. I like to keep a leaf or something to gently cover the loop. It's not going to obstruct it because you can still pull it back and put your flower through there. But to me, having that stick out is an unfinished look. So I always put a little leaf right there. So I made this little tiny one because, like I had just mentioned, I kind of like to start smaller and get bigger. Because with it being a 20-inch or a 21-inch crown, if somebody has a larger head and it doesn't completely close, it's still pretty. If it was big and bulky on both ends and it didn't close, it'd just abruptly stop. So I think this kind of diffuses it down into a smaller, like it's just sort of disappearing. But that's me. A lot of reasons why people do tutorials is to just give you a general idea and then let you decide where you want to go and how you want to take it. So that's what I do when I watch a YouTube video. I watch several, I take notes, I try different techniques, and in the process I usually discover something that works better for me that I didn't learn in any of them. But had I not watched those videos, I probably wouldn't have thought of it. So, all right, now you want to take your floral wire. And I usually just, not usually throw it down, but hi there. All right, so you're not going to start with the wire facing away from the crown. You want to turn the wire this way. Actually, this is how I normally do it. Okay. So the wire, you don't wrap it this way. Can you see the wire? I can't see it from here. So anyway, you want to face the wire going into the crown and leave yourself about 2 inches or so, and then hold the wire there. And then you're going to wrap the wire onto itself and around the teeny tiny little bunch of flowers. You want to do 2 or 3 times. Try not to overlap the wire, because then you're creating a bump on the other side, which will not be comfortable when you put it on your head. All right, so now we have that one. We're going to go to one of the bouquets that we made with only 1 rosebud. You want to lay that just so staggered down so it blends in with what you just put in. And remember, if you watched the first video, and I'm assuming you did, because this video probably wouldn't make much sense. There we go. These are flexible. The way that we constructed them, they're flexible so that you can move the flowers around. That's a #1 reason why each and every one of my elements is singly wired, so that you can create the fullness and texture that you want and not have it be lumpy, 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 lumpy. Like my terminology, lumpy, 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 lumpy. Okay, so now you're going to wrap this around about 2 times. Now, at this point, this is when we want to start adding our leaves. These are the leaves from the rose bushes. And I chose these because there's so much light green and light colors that there's very little depth. So I'm choosing to use the darker green flowers out of all the darker green leaves out of all of the leaves I collected from the different flower bushes that you see in this crown. And it's really going to be a matter of taste where you put these. I like to crisscross over the top, because then they seem to lay fanned out better than had I, you see what I'm doing there? Instead of laying the leaves along the wire, I laid the first leaf along the right side, but then directed it over to the left, and then vice versa, and then wrap a couple of times, careful not to overlap. Not sure why my camera's going out of focus like that. It was doing that yesterday. Okay, since we've got this point, the next step is a single red rose, and we're going to use a smaller rose on the bush of flowers that I bought. There are various sizes of roses. There were buds, smaller blooms, and then a full rose. That's ideal when you're making a flower crown to look for that, because you want to be able to use the various sizes to create depth and interest. If you use the same size rose all the way through, it's going to be very uniform and very artificial, rather than more natural with the different size roses. I like how I talk with my hands. Okay, so when I add the rose, I like to add the leaves and everything at the same time, the different textures. So I'm not wrapping and overlapping the wire. So the rose and some of the texture a couple of times. A couple more leaves. Now these are ficus leaves. I like the pointy tips on them and they're a little bit darker, and we're going to use some of those as well. If we use the same leaf all the way through, yet we have different types of flowers, you wouldn't find that in a bouquet. You would find the leaves that belong to each of the flowers. Now keep in mind that these are flexible, so try not to be overcritical as you're making it. Allow yourself to just kind of I say that because I'm overcritical when I make it. I'm always stopping and looking and see where we're at so far. Okay, so we're alternating roses with bouquets. So now that we have done that, we're going to go to a bouquet that has 2 rosebuds, and we want the pink and the white. We do have some with red and pink, and those go towards the center of the crown. You want to place it so that the elements balance each other out. So this green pod here, I have a green pod that's over here. So I want to be able to keep them alternated. So I don't want the pods on the same side. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to place this one just so. And give the rose enough room so that it doesn't get smushed. And then zhuzh out the flowers so that, now I'm noticing that there is a gap, so we're going to have to add some leaves right there. And I'm going to do that while holding the bouquet so that I don't have to, again, overlap the wire too many times. And I'll just slide it in underneath. Actually, we're going to X-may that. We're going to lay another layer of leaves before we do the bouquet that will easily fill that gap. 2 rose leaves. I hear a beeping. I'm assuming it's probably outside. Okay, see that? Okay. Now we can place the bouquet, making sure that the pod is on the opposite side of the previous, and that gap is easily filled now. It's kind of hard to make this looking through the camera when I normally look at it this way. So I'll give you a view and then I'll take a view. You see, that's what it looks like from behind. You can still see the base. I like leaving the base raw. I don't go back when I'm done and tape it with floral tape. When you do wrap your wire around each element, you want it to be taut enough. Don't get too loosey-goosey with it, because you need everything to stay in place. And when you get done and decide you want to zhuzh and move things around, they'll be strong enough to stay in place. See how pretty that's coming? I think that's very Sweetheart Valentine's Day. I don't know if anybody will buy it. I do have an Etsy store, Drew's Enchanted Crafts on Etsy. It has 8 crowns in it. I've had the store for several months and have not sold a single crown. However, I have sold 3 crowns just from having them on display in my salon. And it's only fitting. It's a hair salon. I have my hair accessories that are made by me. Okay, so now that we're moving on to the next row of flowers, we're going to double. We're going to use a red and a white rose. We're moving towards the center, so we want it to be fuller. So choose whatever rose you choose to be the bigger one. You want a smaller of the opposite color. So these look about the same size. So I want let's do a bigger white. Okay, I got a bigger white and a smaller red. They can be next to each other, not on top of each other. See, that's already pretty. There goes my focus again. All right, so we're going to add some flowers, and we just used the rose leaves, so we want to add some ficus leaves. Make sure they don't get lost into the center, because you do want them to kind of fill out the sides. Now you could probably bundle these roses together like I did the smaller bouquets, but I sort of make this up as I go along. So as I grow my channel and make more videos, I'm sure that I will be better prepared with design, but I think sometimes sort of having just a general idea and let it organically go together is probably like the best way that I create anything. Having patterns and structure is great. For some people, it's a necessity. Me, I like to have a pattern and structure as a guideline, but then kind of go rogue and, like I just said, organically allow something to come together. Now, since we haven't used any of this in the last several inches, we're going to add some of those, crisscrossing the stems again, just like we did the leaves earlier, so that they stick out along the side. Now you'll notice some of these are smaller pieces. I like to use those towards the end, and some of them are fuller and longer, and those I like to use towards the center. Now, because I don't have a video editing program yet that I like, this may end up being a long video, or I might pause it and go further down and then show you where I go. So the steps are really pretty easy once you get them down, and I'm pretty sure that you're not going to need to listen to me talk or hear me or watch me like mundanely go through this. So let's get this section together. And then we'll move towards the center a little bit more.